Shoddy practices. Topics: environmental, non-compliant, illegal. From auspice to bad test. Prior to the company takeover by Fabian Lyons and Peter Nelson, the original company, Austist, was conducting NDT consultations all over PNG using the following techniques: ultrasonic testing, magnetic particle inspection, dye-penetrant inspection, pipeline coat and wrap inspection, visual inspections of various types. These were all done diligently to the relevant Australian standards. When the takeover occurred and Austist became Pacific Testing Services, one major technique was added: radiographic inspection using a live source of iridium-192. This had not been seriously considered by Austist as, along with all the inherent dangers of transporting using a dangerous radioactive source, it also required a facility for the processing of the X-ray films produced during inspections. Back in the old days, before the introduction of automatic processing machines, all the X-ray films were developed by hand, and some of it still is. There are strict guidelines as to the temperature of the processing chemicals, and the actual development environment, 20 degrees Celsius, give or take a degree or two, is required in order that the chemicals will perform their function for which they were designed and to the required standards. A constant flow of fresh cold water is also required to the wash bath at the end of the processing cycle and between stages. The room must be completely light-proofed with only approved darkroom lights used. In short, a purposely constructed environment. This is the most basic of darkroom's layout. Note: a manual processing darkroom layout suitable for the production of X-ray films can be found at World Health Organization IRIS, Institutional Repository for Information Sharing, Manual of Darkroom Technique by P.E.S. Palmer. World Health Organization darkroom personnel: the procedures and precautions necessary to process X-ray films into high quality. WHO darkroom layout. Fabian Lyons and Peter Nelson used the smallest of the bedrooms in the apartment, which had no air conditioning unit and so was usually over 30 degrees centigrade, was not light-proofed and had no running water. The processing of the X-ray films would be done at night so as to minimize the risk of light leak spoiling the developed film. All the windows were blocked out with cardboard and duct tape and the remaining office lights turned off. There was a darkroom light hanging in the corner. The stainless steel 5-gallon, about 20 liters, processing tanks were stacked on the wooden single bed frame, minus the mattress, and arranged in the usual order: developer, stop bath, fixer and wash bath. But of course, there was no running water for the wash bath. In order to lower the temperature of the chemicals, several bags of ice were purchased from a local petrol station and added to the chemicals just before processing. However, this only lowered the temperature by a few degrees, nowhere near that required by Australian standards. Ideally, the developed, fixed, and washed films would be dried in an approved cabinet dryer or at least hung from a line in an air-conditioned environment. This was not possible. Enter Lady Remington. Instead of either method, the films remained in their processing frames, which were hung in a cardboard box. The box dimensions needed to be close enough to allow the frame edges to hang over the sides with the film holders in the middle. A hole was put in the bottom of the cardboard box to allow access for the Lady Remington hair dryer, which supplied the hot air at a low speed so as not to burn out the motor. A large plastic bag over the top sealed the environment. Ingenious? Yes. Reliable? No. Standard compliant legal? No. Within the filing cabinet of discarded documents is a company quality control manual, required of all NDT companies and always requested by NATA, National Association of Testing Authorities, audit. Inside this QC manual is a list of equipment, and although absolutely no mention of this PNG darkroom, someone had inadvertently added the Lady Remington to the list of other NDT inspection apparatus, power leads and office equipment. View on the link below. Open excerpt. And as for the used chemicals, the 5-gallon tanks were pushed to the bathroom and poured into the bath. No environmentally friendly disposal here. The viewing of the processed films was also controlled, requiring low background lighting, viewing aids, etc., etc. This was also lacking. The X-ray films were eventually sent to Australia where they could be viewed properly, but by that time the welded joint to which they referred had been accepted or rejected, and even if it was still accessible, going back to the client with a "sorry but we missed defective weld" would never look good. The Kanudi power plant, constructed and inspected during this time, could be a ticking bomb. The construction company in charge of the project was Korean Heavy Industries Company Hanjung, and is just one example of many who received substandard inspection services. Safety concerns. There was usually only one person resident in the PNG office apartment and he would do the processing alone. At 35 degrees Celsius and without air, Just by expecting employees to work in this room was neglectful enough, let alone in the presence of copious quantities of developing and fixing chemicals in 20-liter stainless steel processing tanks. Prematurely opening the bedroom door to escape, if overpowered by the fumes, would let in light and cause the ruin of an entire day's work. The MSDS, Material Safety Data Sheet, for the developer used clearly states to use only in a well-ventilated area with 10 to 12 room changes of air per hour minimum, but as mentioned, that room did not have an air conditioner and the windows were taped shut. Another example of the attitude of these employers to safety is that no personal radiation recording devices were ever issued. These film badge dosimeters must legally be worn by all people involved in the use of X-ray machines and live radiation sources and record the exact amount of radiation that a person receives during the handling of this dangerous equipment. They are then sent to a special facility that processes them and returns the dose received. Small doses are expected and deemed acceptable, but more than the threshold, and the employee will be prevented from working in this field for a period of time, example, 6 months. These potentially life-saving devices were promised but never issued. Link to Wikipedia article on dosimeters.